Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the phylum Mollusca. So let's get started. So in the kingdom Animalia, one of the phylums is Mollusca, also known as mollusks. And mollusks are soft-bodied animals, and the word mollusca comes from the Latin word for soft, but more like soft as in soft and squishy, not like a soft fur on an animal. So soft and squishy. And there are about 60,000 species in this phylum, so there is a lot of diversity within this. Some characteristics of mollusks: they have a head with eyes or tentacles. So if you kind of picture a snail, kind of their tentacles up on, have the eyeball at the end. In most species, there's a muscular foot, which helps the mollusk to move. It kind of slides. But other animals within this phylum have adapted and use it for jet propulsion. So kind of like an octopus, how they can kind of swim almost through the ocean. Mollusks also have a mantle. It's a fold within the lining of the shell. And so the mantle often releases calcium carbonate, which builds a shell. So if you find shells on the beach, they have often typically come from animals in this phylum. And so the shell is made of chitin, which is a tough, semi-transparent substance. And so the animals in this phylum are not like hermit crabs. So, hermit crabs, they find a shell, they move maybe from shell to shell as they get bigger. But with these mollusks, their shell grows as they grow. So it's more comparable to, like our skin it expands as we grow. And so that's what these shells are like. So think more of skin, not so much as like a house that you move from house to house. Mollusks also have a mass that houses their organs. They have a complete digestive tract, and most of them have gills which absorb oxygen from the water, similar to fish. And also, many mollusks have a radula, and so it's unique to mollusks, so it's their feeding structure. It's not a tongue, but it's similar to it. It's also made of chitin, which is what their shell is made out of. And they use it for different things, so scraping off algae, or also it's kind of like the beak of a squid or an octopus that they use to eat. Next is some more characteristics. So their bodies are divided into two parts, the foot and the mantle, which I already spoke about. Different mollusks have adopted the same body plan for various lifestyles. So I kind of touched on that too, how snails ooze along on their foot and have a shell. Clams dig into the mud with their foot, and they have a hinged shell, so it's a little different than the one whole shell that a snail has. Clams have two parts. And then squid have adapted their foot into arms and tentacles. And then also they use their mantle for jet propulsion. So it's not a shell, but they do have a hard surface inside of them, which is a remnant of a shell. For their environment and habitat, most mollusks live in marine habitats. They're very abundant there, but they can also be found in freshwater and terrestrial habitats. So, snails especially are a good example of this. You can find them in the garden, in ponds. Slugs are the same way. But even if they live on land, they usually need moist places. So the dirt, if it's moist, will be you'd be more likely to find a snail there than in a really dry area. And then this is kind of interesting, but there was a hoax that was kind of in the early days of the internet coming out, and it's called the tree octopus hoax. So basically, this was an internet site that came about, and it was, about saving the tree octopus. They were pretending that, and the octopus had adapted to living on land. So that's just kind of a good reminder to use our knowledge and help us to understand, okay, what do we know about octopi? Can they actually live on land? To kind of evaluate our sources and, is it really possible or is this a hoax? So that's always good to think about too. Some common representatives of mollusks. So mollusks are divided into three main groups. The first group is gastropods, so they have a single shell or no shell at all. Some examples of this would be a slug. They have no shell. You can kind of see their relative size based on that blade of grass and the leaf. They're pretty small. A snail has a shell. It is very similar to a slug except for the shell. And you can kind of see most of them are pretty small. I know the ones I found around our convent are about the size of the one on that person's fingertip. Some snails, like there's a variety of African snail that is very large, maybe the size of your hand, but typically they're pretty small. This is a nautilus, and they have really beautiful shells. And for relative size, you can kind of see compared to that scuba diver down there. And they are one of the most ancient forms of mollusks. They're one of the first in this group, one of the oldest. This is a butterfly bubble shell. It's about the size of the palm of your hand, maybe a little smaller. And so it's really beautiful. So you can kind of see all the different varieties that there are within this phylum. And you can kind of see the shell is the striped part kind of in here. So that is what part they have that has the shell. Bivalves are the second group of mollusks, and they have a shell made up of two pieces. And so scallops are one, and they are about the size of the palm of your hand. They have that hinged shell, so you can see it in two parts, 1, 2. And then the soft body, so Mollusca, the soft body inside their shell. Next, we have oysters. These are clams. And you can again see the soft body and then one half of the shell, and then the two parts on the other clams there. This is a giant clam, and so you can see again the two sides of the shell. And then for size comparison, you can see with that scuba diver, that is a very large clam. It's one of the largest clams in the group of mollusks. Cephalopods include large invertebrates, which often lack a shell. So these are the really fascinating ones too. Not that shells aren't, but these are the ones that you often see in movies. I was thinking specifically of the movie Finding Dory. There's, giant shell or giant squid, and then the octopus, which befriends her. And so this is a squid, and you can see it has adapted its foot into lots of different arms and tentacles. And then its mantle is here, and it what exists of its shell is in there too. Again, another type of squid, which is a lot larger. Relative to a bus, they're often about 40 feet long, so they're just fascinating. Their eye can be the size of a beach ball. And then this is a giant octopus, which this is the largest form of octopus. Their wingspan, so to speak, could be almost 30 feet. This is one of the most dangerous types of octopi. They're so venomous they can kill you, even though they're one of the smallest, which is interesting. And the blue-ringed octopus is its name. And they can change color and texture in instants in order to blend, which is neat. Some fun facts: squids have 3 hearts, and some species in this phylum have blue or colorless blood because our blood color comes from the iron that binds to the hemoglobin, but in many mollusks, their blood color is based on copper rather than iron, which bonds to oxygen, and so that's why it has a blue color. And then again, just the beauty of God's creation, and to see the varieties in this phylum. And again, the beauty of shells. Mollusks often lay eggs. They sexually reproduce, but a few of the more simple species within this phylum reproduce asexually. They are very beneficial to humans. often we eat these, and you can also use them. Their shells are mixed with tar for making roads. Shells are often used for ornaments, jewelry, decoration. Oysters make pearls. There are harmful mollusks as well. Slugs destroy crops and other gardens. And then shipworm destroys ships. And zebra mussels, I'm sure we have all heard about that, being careful not to transfer them to from lake to lake because they can clog drains and cause a lot of damage. And they're also very sharp, so they can hurt those who are swimming. Mollusks are fairly simple compared to other organisms. They are multicellular, so they're more complex than protists, but at the same time, they lack complexity of other animals. So many lack a brain. Octopi are one of the few that have a brain, and their organ systems are very simple. Their nearest relatives are segmented worms. So the phylum, I think it's pronounced Annelida. This phylum includes the earthworm and the leech, but the two phylums species in these phylums look similar in the early stages of development, which is why scientists think that they are the most similar to one another. They have similar organ systems, but their body shape is different. Some ideas for the classroom. There's a really interesting, fairly short 10-15-minute video about mollusks, and even though the vocabulary might be slightly high for some elementary students, just the videography is so fascinating, just seeing these animals, seeing them outrun each other, trying to escape from predators, and it's all happening underwater, animals I've never seen before, so that's really neat, and it's exciting too. It's kind of based off of the survival of these animals. National Geographic Kids has some good resources about this. Also, thinking of snails, some of these are very easy to find, either their shells or the snails themselves. So you could bring them into your classroom or maybe go explore on the playground or around the school grounds and see if, you can find snails, maybe some slugs. And I think a lot of children just have a natural fascination with this phylum, especially with the octopus or squid. They're interesting, and they might have seen them in movies and want to know more about what they're actually like. And then shells too are so beautiful and fascinating. So I think you can maybe do a lot with this group. And then that is my bibliography. Found a lot of good information. And so I hope that you all found this helpful and interesting. And I look forward to listening to everyone else's presentations.